Thank you very much, Miquel, for inviting us again. We are delighted to be here again, especially to see some of the old faces we met in different places all around Europe. Very nice to have you again here in Barcelona. Well, this presentation was prepared by my colleague, Enric Serra, who's fourth row to the very left, almost next to the screen, just in case you have some questions at the very end. He'll be delighted, of course, to answer them. Especially the difficult ones, go to them. The easy ones, you can always come to me, please. My name's Sònia, and I work at the language service in the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona. Let me go. Oops, sorry, I don't know why we're here. Oops. There we go. All right, we're going to talk today about adapting to e-learning, our experience at the language service in our university. I'm going to talk a little bit, not everybody here is from our country, Catalonia, so I'll talk also to, for people who are from abroad to try and see where we work, give some information about our university as well. My talk will not probably be so lively as Tunda's talk. I'm sorry about that. I'll try and do my best to try and catch your attention at this time of the morning. This is our webpage, our language service webpage. About 50 people work at the university, Autonomous University Language Service. About 35 teachers, different languages. We teach English and Spanish and Catalan for foreigners, and also we teach French and German and Japanese and so forth. And we have a nice, very good multilingual team of translators. We have about 9 people in the administration office. We have over 3,000 students a year, students who come to us to study languages for their curriculum within the university, for their degrees at university. Also within our language service, we have helped in the design of the university plan for languages, we call it, which is indeed the framework of reference for language policy at our university. And in this language plan, you can read about our commitment, the university's commitment to linguistic sustainability. This is a 4-year plan starting in 2011, running until 2015. This plan has basically been the work of Marta Estella, who's also here in the audience, next to Enric, if you like to ask her some questions about our university language policy. I'm sure she'll be the person able to answer these questions. First, about our relationship with virtual learning. I'll try and focus our talk on the topic given by the organizers. We started quite a long time ago, just before the year 2000. About 9 Catalan universities got together with the help of the Catalan government. And we managed to design a nice tool, 1.0 tool if you want, for learning virtually, learning thanks to web connection. And we designed this material that you can check online if you wanted to. It might look a bit oldish now, because as I said, it was created between 2001 and 2006, finished in 2006. So everything from that year now looks or might look very old-fashioned. But the content is still very, very rich and valid, especially for university students. This tool helps university students to develop their linguistic and communicative abilities, not just in Catalan, in any language, right? So it's a multilinguistic approach. The tool helps them develop skills like note-taking, summarizing, skimming, scanning, writing a curriculum, handling a job interview, being successful at a job interview, and oral presentations, amongst other topics. So we were pioneers, probably within Catalonia, back in the year 2000, together with other 8 universities, I have to say, developing this very interesting material for students, which still is used today. Our second generation, if you allow me to call it that way, second generation e-learning, was to embed this, for example, this material, Argumenta, within our intranet or our campus virtual. So university staff, not just professors, but also people working at the university and all members of, all students, postgraduate students as well, have access to this material within their intranet, right? So they have access to this material just with their code number, username and code, and they have access to all this material online still nowadays. So that's what we consider a second generation e-learning. Together with that, we developed, with a company, I have to admit that, we developed a tool for English language learning online. So quite a lot of our teachers spend some hours every week developing some materials for this tool, which is called LinguAssist. The students, it was an extra tool for the students to use freely outside their classroom, at home basically, in their university computer rooms, and they had access to this material online. They still have access to it. We're still developing, it's never ending, right? We're still developing materials for this LinguAssist tool. That's what we call our second generation e-learning. We still have these tools, they are still being used, but of course, we are always developing. Now we are right in the middle of our third generation e-learning, if you allow us to mention it that way. What we have seen throughout the last very few years is the rise of the social web. We have loads of blogs and wikis and other similar tools created by our language teachers, not just language teachers, also, for example, by our translators who are always in touch with each other and in touch with a more external community of translators, for instance. For example, the web that now you can see on the screen was to prepare students for a level of Catalan, which is a C2 level of Catalan in the framework. And 5-6 teachers working together to develop this blog with links to very interesting resources for the learners. And also it's got interesting teaching material, assessment information, continuous assessment, also the final exam, some samples of final exams. It's an example of a collaborative blog, I would say, right? So lots of people working together and being able to have everything in one same platform blog for students' access. So it's free for them for consultation. Just to show you other examples of this third generation e-learning in which we are embedded now. I'll show you a simple blog created by 2 English language teachers, which they had to teach an English course for librarians. So the first thing they thought about, where are we going to have all the materials, for access for each other and also for the students and for the director of studies or whoever wants to, if they want to check it out. So they just created a blog with access to interesting material and dictionaries. Just for you to see that 2 teachers autonomously decided to create a blog for themselves and also, of course, for their students. And yet 2 more examples, another one from a French teacher who's teaching French at the tourism faculty within our university as well. This was just one teacher without really sharing anything with anyone else, just creating a blog for her own students at the faculty of tourism, at the tourism school. And yet we have, for example, just to show you a wiki created, a very simple wiki, if you allow me to say, created by a German teacher. And it's just to show you a different example of what's being created now by our teachers quite freely, quite independently. I think one of the things I would like to mention here is the difficulty in having teachers work together in one same blog or wiki. It was mentioned before, it's sometimes difficult to motivate your own colleagues into doing things which are extra and probably are time-consuming, although rewarding, after a few months or a few years. Also, I would like to mention that what I'm finding with some of the teachers there is this strange sense of ownership of material. It reminds me of the old photocopier, which we rarely use nowadays. I don't know if you remember, as an English teacher myself, I went to the photocopier to make some photocopies, and depending on who was there standing on the queue, you would share the material or not. Say, so what are you photocopying? Huh? Something very interesting I found, last weekend in the paper. So can I have a look, right? So depending on who was approaching you, you would share or not with that person. Probably would depend on whether that person had shared before with you or not, and probably attitudes. And so the attitude of sharing or not sharing, ownership, not ownership, in spite of all these things that allow us to share openly online, but in spite of that, I find some teachers are not very willing to let you see what they are doing, right? In class and in the more abstract sense as well. The keys to our relationship with the learning over the last 15 years. Well, first of all, and as Lina Vic, am I pronouncing it well? Yeah, Vic said yesterday, and I agree with him entirely. Failure is the only way to learn something. Unless we don't fail, we will never probably learn correctly. Well, what I'd like to read aloud is the points you have, the bullet points you have here on the slide. Over the last few years, we want to show we have a tendency towards innovation. We are fostering teacher innovation. We are doing teacher training in emerging technologies. As you will see later on, we organize workshops for teachers on technology quite often. And Enric is, of course, partially in charge of that. We are also ensuring teaching suitability. I would like to say also that only a few teachers really believe a lot in technology. Only a few teachers are expanding, right, are innovating. And I think it's our job as director of studies, responsible people in the institution, not to impose certain things, but to try and push them towards it, but in a kind of gentle way, right? Imposition does not work. Also, we have to ensure the teaching suitability of certain tools, and that only works trying out themselves. It's very difficult to share whether one thing is suitable for you or for me. It really depends on the person, on the class, on the kind of students you might have that year. I agree with one of the speakers yesterday. We do have to avoid using resources just because they are fashionable now, or just because everybody's using this app now. Well, it's not a good reason, is it? Huh? It's difficult to see how to push teachers into innovation without them feeling too pushed. Because you know what happens, if they feel too pushed, they'll just go to class, teach, and go home without really getting involved with the organization. And that's really what we don't want to happen. Well, what do we do in relation to this avalanche of resources, if you allow me the word avalanches? Well, first of all, we're doing some collaborative work. We've got a social bookmarker, which is Mr. Wong, I hope. Sorry, let's hope the link might work. Yeah, that's the link for you to see that it's an aggregation tool that we have for all teachers to contribute to. So lots of teachers from different languages, and not just teachers, are contributing to this tool, which we've had for a few years now, maybe 2 or 3 years running. It's true that we do have this tool. It's an aggregation, so lots of teachers just add the links that they find useful for language learning. But it's true that we have considered to move on now. We have to move on onto curation more than just aggregation. And that's a step we're starting to take now, because we have to base ourselves on this expertise, the expert knowledge that we have, as Norbert said yesterday, and we have to be able to curate all these contents, not just to aggregate that. Another tool I would like to show. was, sorry, that was your presentation, no problem. I don't think it's open now, but it really doesn't matter too much. Sorry about that. We have an application here, which is Netvibes. It's an application dashboard. Probably you've heard about it. Let me link on it. I hope it works quickly for you, especially for the people watching. All right, so this is Netvibes, which we use to try and put some order in all this chaos of different applications created by different people within our language service, and it is not just teachers but also people involved in training, in translation and so forth. So we have them all together here. It's a dashboard of applications which we find quite useful. There we go. Another thing that I mentioned before is teacher training. We do believe that teacher training is one of the key issues, right? So we organize workshops for the teachers continuously. But what we try is to encourage teachers to train other teachers within the same organization. Because we have found that there's a tendency to believe that, well, if a person is coming from the outside world, or one of your superiors, or a person there high above, gives a presentation, it's usually not taken into, it's not taken the same way, in the same way as if just a colleague of yours is giving the presentation. As far as I can see, presentations or workshops given by colleagues are probably more successful in the sense of number of people attending, number of questions at the end, right, than training that we organize being given by people from the external world, if you know what I mean by external. And also something quite important, lately we are trying to integrate mobile learning as well. So the platform I showed you before, the LinguAssist platform for learning English online, it's being adapted to be used on mobile devices. And also some of the teacher seminars we are organizing, training seminars, also include mobile applications which might be useful for the students and for the teachers alike in and out of class, right? I'm not going to show you anything yet. We are also developing now, for example, a small application for mobile use, right? Not just mobile phones, mobile use, which it's an inter-university project which will develop in the next months. Something I wanted to mention as well. Just a few days ago at the British Consulate, I attended a very interesting conference by Pete Sharma, the co-author of books like Blended Learning. You might know him. And apparently he asked a question in Brazil in front of an audience of hundreds of students, secondary school students. And he asked the question, would you like to use a mobile phone in the class? And apparently absolutely everybody in the audience, children between teenagers, between 16, 18, all of them raised their hands. I don't know about you. Would you like to use your own mobile device in your class? Hands up. What would you think?
A few.
A few of you? 7, 8 people? Well, well, compared to what Pete Sharma was saying, that absolutely everybody in the audience in Brazil, right? Apparently it was a big place, so hundreds of students from secondary school. They all said, yes, we would love to use our mobile devices in class. And we usually are forced not to use them, right? Please hide that, listen to me, listen to what I'm saying, or just look at the blackboard or the whiteboard or the interactive board and just, pay attention to me and what I'm saying. Having said that, all right, I'll do that, which a lot of people hate, but in pairs, please. Think of a language you'd like to learn or to improve, and tell each other about it just for 30 seconds. Think of a language you'd like to learn or improve. Just for a second, right? Could you tell each other, right? 15 seconds, come on. Miquel? German, we studeren Slaps. saps? Jo et dic Strubell sempre, per això. Jo et catalans no sé. No t'enfades, No.
Què demanes? Quines llengües?
No.
Quanta estona estaràs encara?
No, poca estona, Miquel. Sí, 10 minutets, no, com a molt, no, menys, 5 minuts. All right, and now to study that language, the language that you've thought about and you've shared with your colleagues, would you like to take a traditional course, an online course, or a blended one? Right? And why? Tell each other about it just for a second, because Miquel is getting quite impatient. We're running out of time. What kind of course would you like to take? Traditional, online, blended? Okay. Hands up if you'd like to take a language course which is traditional, going to class physically. Traditional, hands up? Nobody at all, great. Online? Basically online? One person, two? Blended? Wow, a big majority. All right. Another question. Imagine you had to be operated on, you know, surgery, heart problems, important problems you had to be operated on. Would you like your surgeon to have been trained mostly online? Just a question. You don't have to answer. I can imagine the answer. All right. I wanted to mention as well that barriers are continually breaking down. Where are we learning? In class, on the move, at home, at work? Is there really a barrier between these places, right? It's all a continuum, isn't it? Huh? When exactly are we in class? We're always learning, we're always in class. When exactly are we at work? I'm at work now, aren't you? I mean, these barriers are breaking down. How do we learn? With published materials, with our own teachers' materials, with our own materials as students that we can create or look for? Do we learn thanks to or because of closed platforms? Like many of them probably you know, like, you know, Tell Me More and things like that. Blogs and wikis, Facebook, very popular now among certain language teachers to use Facebook as a platform. Apps, authentic and adapted material, difficult nowadays to distinguish, isn't it? Real or virtual world, as mentioned yesterday as well. Formal or informal learning. Does it really make sense to keep on talking about formal or informal learning? I was reading the Time magazine the other day, and I saw that, you know, you've probably come across the magazine talking about the 100 most influential people in the world. And Bill Gates, of course, was asked to give his opinion. And he decided to go for Salman Khan. You know him? Right? khanacademy.org. Well, a site with over 3,000 short lessons to allow kids to learn at their own pace, maths, physics, and probably language and foreign languages as well. The world is changing. Our teachers are everywhere, not just in our physical classroom. And he is supposed to be one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Bill Gates. All right, what about our language university services? Do we have any role in this? What's our role? What can we do? We cannot forget these marketing issues. We do have a rise in learning platforms. People come to us and they want to sell us their platforms. We get phone calls almost every day. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Why don't you try it for free for a few months with your students? Versus the unlimited online resources, which we can take a look at and we can choose from and have you know, a blog or a wiki or whatever to have them added onto that. As Vic said as well yesterday, educational budgets decrease in our country, Catalonia. They are decreasing dramatically now. So it is now, I agree with Vic yesterday, saying it is now time for partnerships and networks to work together on projects and, for example, buying or doing material together instead of just, as probably we did in the past, just different universities, although 20 miles from each other, doing different things without really telling each other about it. Should language services create e-learning tools? I'm not sure about that. We've talked quite a lot about it at our language service. We are now, as we said before, developing a very small application, but I'm not too sure about it. As I said, resources are very, very limited, and probably it makes more sense to curate what's there for us to choose from, and just develop what is really essential for our university language services. So if we do find that there is a lack in the market, global market, and then there is need for that, yes, then why not? But not, first we have to find out whether there is really need or not. Teacher training, yes, of course, but the need, as we said before, for the trainees to see that they do need to be trained, they need to be using new applications, if not in class, maybe for themselves, for their own learning and updating. Group intelligence, we think probably that's the most important one. As an organization, we need to observe, we need to choose, and we need to disseminate. That's probably our most important role. Something we have forgotten to do within our language service is to ask the students. We haven't asked them, and we do need to do that, and we will next year, hopefully, next academic term. What do they want? What do they need? What are they already using? Would they like to use their applications, their mobile devices in class? Yes, no, why? We do have to ask them, and we have to negotiate. As Melinda said before, negotiation is absolutely essential in all this process. I think we are moving towards flipped classroom. Are you aware of this movement now? The flipped classroom. Check it out online. It's quite amazing. The flipped classroom. We have to move from, lectures and homework have to be swapped, have to be flipped. Lectures used to be boring. Students used to be just listening in class, and the homework, the interesting stuff, was done at home or not, individually or in small groups sometimes. Now probably the boring job, boring in the sense of listening and finding out facts, can be done easily at home or wherever you are. You can do that at home, and maybe in class what we do need to do is have students do things together. In our case, do things together with language, put things into practice. They probably don't need to listen to Ken. In our classroom, we just send the students the link, and I'm sure most of our students have already listened to him. But they probably need to listen to him at home or wherever, come to class and have a discussion about that topic in class. So we do need to change probably our schemes a little bit, right? So put into practice everything you learn at home or outside the physical classroom when you are together with other classmates, with other students in your own situation. And last but not least, I would like to play a very short video that two colleagues of mine, Enric and another colleague, Silvia Solà, developed, which is what our feelings are about apps. I would like to start with that I agree with Norbert yesterday regarding apps, that it's not a question of why, but how can we afford not to use them in language learning, right? All right, so I would just like to play the video, and with that, it's a 3-4 minute video that Enric and another colleague created. I hope it's very short and simple. I hope you like it. It's happened before. A click, right? Oh, good. It's in Catalan, so the interpreters will probably have to help us with that, because the video Are the interpreters there, Miquel?
Sí.
Yeah, sorry, I cannot see them from here. Thank you very much. You're lovely.
Ets un aprenent de llengües aplicat? L'ús de dispositius mòbils creix i els centres d'idiomes rumien com fer servir les aplicacions per a aquests dispositius. No n'hi ha prou fent accessible el web a tauletes i telèfons? Cal emigrar dels ordinadors i començar a fer servir les apps? Són una bona via per aprendre en la ubiquitat? Apple i Android en tenen ja més d'1 milió. Sabríeu com localitzar les millors? Hi ha moltes apps de llengua. L'Apple Store en conté milers per a iPhone o per a iPad. Però són realment útils per aprendre llengües? Als magatzems d'apps hi ha de tot, i la qualitat tècnica no és sempre idònia. Hi ha apps que poden reforçar el nostre aprenentatge de llengua. Diccionaris, traductors, llibres, jocs... I hi ha apps específiques per aprendre llengües, de vocabulari, pronunciació, xarxes socials... Algunes s'atreveixen fins i tot amb moltes llengües. I el valor pedagògic. Hi ha qui les veu com productes de moda sense valor per aprendre una llengua. Les millors solen ser senzilles i motivadores, orientades a l'acció i a la col·laboració. Les apps són petites aules expandides, una acadèmia a la butxaca. Què n'hem de fer, doncs? S'han d'implicar les organitzacions a crear-ne? Per afany innovatiu? Perquè són essencials per promoure el nou aprenentatge mòbil? Per una pura estratègia de màrqueting? El treball amb apps a l'organització requereix formació, avaluació, experimentació a l'aula i la implicació de tothom en un treball veritablement col·laboratiu. L'organització ha de vetllar també perquè hi hagi unes bones condicions de connectivitat sense les quals la tecnologia mòbil perd tot el seu sentit. Què ha de fer el professorat de llengües? Abandonar blogs i wikis i llançar-se a les apps? Es poden incorporar fàcilment a la docència? El professorat ha de conèixer aquest nou recurs per aprendre llengües? Com pot gestionar l'ús de les apps si a classe només alguns estudiants tenen dispositius mòbils? És just incorporar a l'aula una tecnologia encara no universal? Què s'ha de fer amb els que tenen aquesta tecnologia i la fan servir? I amb els que no la tenen? Hi ha professorat que creu en les apps i professorat que no, que es pregunta com es poden aprendre llengües amb pantalles reduïdes i interfícies incòmodes, si algú realment ha après llengües amb apps i si no eren millors, al capdavall, els llibres de text, les classes presencials o els ordinadors. I els aprenents de llengües? Els dispositius mòbils els han de permetre continuar aprenent des de les aules expandides i ser més i més autònoms. Aplicacions per aprendre llengües, doncs, sí o no? La resposta és la qualitat i l'adequació pedagògica dels materials que fem servir per aprendre, siguin apps o no. La resposta és el suport a l'ús de dispositius mòbils i d'apps i el respecte pels que practiquen i pels que no practiquen la informàtica mòbil al centre d'idiomes o fora l'aula. La resposta és el coneixement expert dels professionals. La resposta és, com sempre en educació, saber gestionar l'heterogeneïtat.
There we go. Hope you liked it. It was very, very short, just to show you what our feelings are in relation to apps. Thank you very much.
Hi ha temps per alguna pregunta concreta i, si no, durant el dinar estic segur que tant l'Enric com la Marta i la Sònia estaran encantat i encantades de posar-se en contacte amb vosaltres. Hi ha preguntes? Ens estem cansant una mica ja al final del matí. Molt bé. Melinda, aquí davant.
No és gens una pregunta, és més una observació de que jo allí, quan estava parlant el doctor Patchler, tenia la mateixa pregunta que en els anys 90 ja s'havien parlat del digital divide, no? Entre els nadius i no nadius digitals, i ara estem parlant dels mòbils i has parlat de la divisió de mobilitat. Jo crec que és una cosa important a pensar. No sé quina experiència teniu que en les classes els alumnes estan disposats, tenen i estan disposats a fer-ho servir?
Gràcies, Melinda. Ara ja no sé en quina llengua parlar. I'll probably continue in English. Yeah, well, what we find is that lots of students now are using, that's one of the recommendations, always speak in a language which is not your own language. So Melinda did a great job speaking in Catalan, and now I'll do a regular job speaking in English. One of what we find in classes, in physical classes, also in the Faculty of Education, where both Melinda and I teach or lecture, is that some of the students come with their mobile phones or tablets, and they use them all the time in class. There are some professors and also some English teachers or language teachers in general who are not very happy with that and tend to say, please don't use that in class, I'm speaking, or try and focus on whatever we're doing, without even checking whether that student is using that app or that application or whatever for learning or to keep on learning, apart from whatever you're saying or whatever you're doing in class, so to try and combine both things at the same time. I think that we do have to combine them, we have to accept them in class, and we have to make the most of them. Don't ask me how, but the first, for example, silly thing is the English phonetic chart. The chart, everybody is using this very easy apps for free, of course, that you can download, and having the students with the phonetic chart in front of them and being able to listen to the different sounds. Sometimes you're not able to monitor a big group of students, all of them at the same time. So how do you pronounce this sound in English? Is it not So I think it's very useful, for example. It's a very simple app and everybody can have it handy. So I think it's the job of the teachers now to try and integrate them in class without feeling too panicky about it.
Not a pregunta, but more a comment. I just take the point of departure of the comment of one of your last sentences of the presentation, saying that using new technology is a matter to cope with the heterogeneity of the classroom. That's an old pedagogical dream. But I think in this way we can turn that round to not only one language, teaching not only one language, and especially not only English, but several languages in the same classroom. So that means mother tongue education to students from several linguistic background, not migrant background, but linguistic background, which means that coping with multilingualism within the same classroom, taking recourse to different technologies and different apps, for example. So this is, I think, a future idea and image in making, in promoting multilingual teaching and multilingual learning in the same classroom.
Thank you, Johan, for your very interesting comment. Our language classes, we have homogeneous classes in the sense that, for example, students learning English, all of them are from here, or most of them are Catalan speakers and Spanish speakers. But we also have, as I said before, we teach Catalan and Spanish for people who are studying, for example, Erasmus students. So we have pretty heterogeneous classes, different linguistic backgrounds in the class. And that's why, in fact, partly why we are developing, together with the help of the Catalan government, because there's an interlingua project for people who are from here, we are developing this app that I mentioned before, which contrasts different Romance languages as a platform to learning or getting to know at least other similar languages to our own languages. So this application, which is being thought of, it has not been developed yet. It's going to be a simple one, but especially for use by students who are from different countries and might have a similar linguistic origin or a good knowledge of one of the Romance languages, and how to develop this feeling that languages are quite similar to each other, and to lose this fear that some students have when they are faced with a language which is not their own language or their acquired languages.
Bé, moltíssimes gràcies, Sònia, per la teva presentació, i em sembla que tothom voldrà aplaudir el que has dit i la feina de l'equip amb qui treballes tan eficaçment. Moltes gràcies.
Gràcies a vosaltres, Miquel, per tot. Gràcies.